Hey, all right. Good morning. Good morning, Steve. I am having a coughing thing going on right now. Man, I tell you, what a what a first day on Code Panel 10. We had a really good. I think we wrote some great code today. I think we wrote some good code today. That's better, I think. Let me fix this. And I had to make it level. I think we wrote some pretty good code today. We had a lot of discussions. We'd made a lot of changes, Steve, but we didn't get through many public comments because one of those, hey yo, Jim Frey in the house. How are you, sir? What is going on? We made we did David Williams. We went through David Williams's. David Williams was a task group chair. Hey, good morning, Keith. Good morning, sir. I wish I had my. I'm gonna plug it in. David Williams. David Williams did did his task group. So one of the things, if you're not familiar with the way we organize the code, maybe it's in my other bag. We take and we create task groups, and the task groups meet in advance of whichever meeting it is, first draft or second draft, and then the task groups go through in their separate meetings, and they're all virtual. And honestly, you can see the schedule for the task groups. And if you want to monitor the task groups, you can ask to be a guest. You're not allowed to speak unless called upon. And I know I'm a task group chair, and I've called upon some guests during our task group work. So, in any case, oh man. David Williams went through, my scalp is itchy now. David Williams went through his task group. So he did Article 100, and he also did some of the globals, like the definition of, we removed the definition of branch circuit overcurrent protective device. And the reason is because you can't, it's really frustrating to, say the feeder has to be protected by a branch circuit overcurrent protective device, or the service has to be protected by a branch circuit overcurrent protective device, and you say, well, that's a branch circuit. Well, so we addressed some of that. We addressed it. I mean, we created a definition of what an overcurrent protective device is, and then in Article 240. We created a new 240.7 that basically, and none of that's in the system. So, oh man, excuse me. I am telling you, I'm going to have some issues today with my throat. I had some drainage last night. So I'm looking for 240. What we did was we created a new 240.7, which basically has, and it's not David Williams, that was, so they bounced around. That was actually Donish Zia. Donish is with UL and NFPA 70. First draft. I got to go find my file, so sorry guys. All right, so here it is. So those were Alan Manchis, Smith. We got to look at Article 240. Article 240 final. I believe that's the one that has the voodoo that we do so well. All right, so what we did was we created a 240.7 that basically tells you what is an overcurrent protective device. And so what we said in 240.7 is, unless permitted elsewhere, the overcurrent protective devices for protecting branch circuits, feeders, and service conductors and equipment shall be one of the following. And this is when we say it's going to be a molded case circuit breaker, a low voltage power circuit breaker, a solid state hybrid circuit breaker, a class C, CA, CB, etc., etc., etc. So now, everywhere where we said branch circuit overcurrent protective device protecting the feeder, all you'll say is the overcurrent protective device protecting the feeder. That tells you that you can't use a supplemental because it's not on the list. You can't use a motor circuit protector or an instantaneous only because it's not on the list. So we now have a term, and we had to take the term and combine it with. We had to take the term and we had to combine it with a section in the code for clarity and accuracy. Make sense? So now we have a definition of an overcurrent protected device. We also have a definition of overcurrent protection because we use that term throughout the code. So we define what overcurrent protection is, we define what an overcurrent protective device is, and in 240.7 we tell you what meets the qualifications of an overcurrent protective device. And one of the main reasons they used branch circuit overcurrent protective device is they wanted to make sure that a supplemental overcurrent device or a supplemental overcurrent protective device or a motor circuit protector. I call it a motor circuit protector. I don't know what you call it, but I think in the code we define it as an instantaneous only circuit breaker. I like motor circuit protector, but I guess that's like I could probably use that device in other applications than a motor circuit for whatever reason, but that's what I call it. Anyway, always did, always will, always have. So that was, I think, we went through, oh my goodness, Steve, Keith, Jim, we went through a lot of 215, 225, 230, 240. We went through all of the sections under the purview of panel 10, and we changed where we have branch circuit overcurrent protective device, or in some cases we just had overcurrent. We said branch circuit device, or we said an overcurrent device must protect this. Well, what does that mean? Overcurrent device. Are you saying what is it? So and then some cases we said the branch circuit protection or something like that. Anyway, pulling stuff out my butt now, but there were a lot of misuses of the term, so we cleaned that up. And that, so what we did was we read through. David Williams had a Word document that went from, I would say, it went from Manhattan over to LA, and we looked at all the different changes. We read through every single one of them. We made some modifications, and we got all of those done with one motion, which was fantabulous, darling. It was great, but it was a lot of changes. So we got through that. So that's 240.7. I think that's a significant change. I think people are going to be talking about 240.7 and the definition. However, remember, time out. Everything that we are talking about is water. I don't speak on behalf of NFPA, Code Panel 10, Code Panel 2, or anybody else that I speak. When it comes out of here, started up here, but it's all from the heart, just trying to share what's going on with all of you who can't be here. Steve says, OCPD are laced throughout the code. Yeah, it was a big job, Steve. It was a big job. It's all over the place. Now, every code panel had to review those loose. And I'll tell you what, I was in panel I'm not going to say which panel it was. But they didn't do it. And I tried to tell them. And they were like, Core Lane Committee will get it. But that's not true. Core Lane Committee can't fix it. So what they did was they had all spelled out, branch circuit overcurrent protective device. And they went, we have to fix this because there's a new term, OCPD. And then they said, branch circuit OCPD. I'm like, well, you got to get rid of the branch circuit. That's wrong. There is no such thing now as a branch circuit OCPD. And it wasn't, anyway, I was a little frustrated because I was like, somebody got to fix that, but it'll get fixed eventually. It's not what I would call a hill I am dying on. All right, and I don't know why I'm getting all of these dings. All right, so we dabbled in 240 a little bit. We dabbled in 240 a little bit, but let's go back over to article. Let's go to here. I gotta look at what changed, what Word documents that I changed yesterday. So Task Group 1 report. Article 230. We had a good discussion at 230. Oh man, Alan Bernstein in the house. Good morning, sir. Very good to see you online. Alan, we had an interesting discussion yesterday on 230.4. In 230.4, we talk about the number of services. And on this channel, and I had questions outside of this channel, we went down through Article 230, and we said, additional services can be permitted to supply an optional standby system. And my issue with that was that if you look at the definition of an optional standby system, gimme? If you look at the GIMI, G-I-M-I. Oh man, I'm losing it, Alan. So special conditions, it says you can pull a service to an optional standby system, but when you look at like 708 or 702 says, let's look at what it says. And this isn't honest. I was like, listen, this doesn't make sense. I think it needs to come out, but I don't know. I'm going to ask the experts, panel 10. And I think panel 13 has to weigh in on this too. But the scope of 702 says, and this is optional standby systems, the system, give me the story. I love it. Give me the story. Yes, I got it. Oh man, love it. So 702 says the systems covered by this article consist of those that are permanently installed in their entirety, including prime movers, so including the prime movers, and those that are arranged for a connection on a premises wiring system from a portable alternate power supply. Now, I think that scope is in a little conflict with putting an energy storage system, but I know me and Al Teresi had a little discussion about that. He's probably 100% right. He was saying that, look, it says, comma, including prime movers. It doesn't mean it has to include prime movers. So I think his point was that you can have an energy storage system as well. And that's fine. That's fine. I can go there. But it says permanently installed in their entirety. Systems covered by this article consist of those that are permanently installed in their entirety, including prime movers, and those that are arranged in a connection for premises wiring from a portable alternate power supply. So, permanently installed in their entirety. So, a serving utility would not be an option for your optional standby source. So I said, I looked in 230.4 and it says, oh wait, hold on. Normally do not consider optional standby system as a service. Right. That's exactly right, Alan. So, and what does Jim say? Jim says there can be layers of protection with specific listed equipment required. Does this new language support what could be the future conductor and equipment protection? We'll talk about that, Jim. So let's get back to 702. So what I did in 230 and in 230.4, and I'm okay with either a second revision or reject. I'm interested in the panel statement. So they rejected it. But the original, what do you call it, substantiation was very, very poorly written. So I asked that question again. I said, okay, guys, hold on. What they said was, no, that's not it. Refer to panel 4, additional services. Okay, so it said the use of a standby system as an additional service that are installed today and removing this item will impact those systems. Well, that doesn't make sense. If I change the code today, it's not going to impact an existing installation. So that sentence did absolutely make no sense. And they said the definition and scope for optional standby systems may need further review. Well, I agree with that. It might need further review. So then in the discussion, I said, guys, I'm not satisfied with that substantiation or that panel statement. Give me a better reason. I'm even okay with a reject but hold. If they hold it for next cycle, I'm not dying on this hill. I think we need to be accurate, and it makes no sense. So, well, we ended up where the discussion went, and I'd love your opinion on this. The code panel said that if you have an on-site generator, which includes the prime mover and the whole bit, it's on-site, permanently installed. If it is owned by the utility, it's now a service. Do you agree with that? I'm not sure I agree with that. Just because it's owned by the utility. I mean, in my opinion, it's a generator. It's a feeder. It's not a service. But they have a point that if I drive 100 miles up the road and I go to the nuclear power plant or the fossil power plant or whatever it is, it has a generator too. If an optional standby system can be called a service, then how about a legally required system or an emergency system? Yes. So, Alan, in my journey to try to understand this, in fact, I was looking just at 230.4 to understand where it came from, and there is a section in there. There is a section that says systems designed for connection. So 230.4A6. Systems designed for connection to multiple sources of supply for the purpose of enhanced reliability. You know who added that? The healthcare organizations. The healthcare guys added that. And you know, in their substantiation, which the code panel accepted, they said that an optional standby system is not permitted to have a utility, a separate utility as a feed for your optional standby. And they needed that because they did it in healthcare. They would use two utility sources from two separate utilities or two separate portions of the grid. And they had to have the reliability for that. But they couldn't do it in 702. So they needed an option 5. All right, it's burning up. It's burning up. All right, so I think I saw that. Alan, I could accept a utility-owned standby generator near my property might be a service. You could. Okay. All right. If outside my fence and the generator connected to the utility wiring, then sure, the generator is a service. Well then, Alan, that is the right answer. I agree with you. So the right answer is, and in my opinion, I think the panel 10 did a good job. I think Panel 10 did a fantastic job, because I agree with you. And as I think about it, I think that, just like you said, if the utility comes in and says, look, you got a plant right here, what we're going to do, and you're going to pay for this, we're going to put a local generator in here, and we're going to maintain it for you, and we're going to supply that power for you. Now, that's the problem with that is your optional standby system, you would not. Here's the other issue we have. No, I don't. 702 would now be met because the local generation is on site. Or is that on site? That doesn't have to be on site. It doesn't have to be on site. Let's go back to 70. It just says permanently installed 702. If I look at the scope of 702, it says this systems covered by this article consist of those that are permanently installed in their entirety, which that generator would be, including prime movers, and those that are arranged for a connection to a premises wiring system from a portable alternative. So it would be permanently installed. I guess it would be permanently installed in their entirety, but it doesn't say on site. Let's go to the definition. That's what El Teresi was going to the definition. El Teresi went back to the definition of optional standby system. And I don't know if that's in the O's or if it's in the S's. Optional standby system. Optional standby system. Is it in the O's? LMNOP, optional standby systems. There it is. It says, those systems intended to supply power to public or private facilities or property where life safety does not depend on the performance of the system. These systems are intended to supply on-site generated or stored power to selected loads. So it's on-site. So that's where the on-site comes from. It's in the definition. So when you put the scope of 702 and this together, it has to be on-site. Now, the question, Alan, if that generator is not on your site and it's outside of your fence, it could be called a utility, but would it meet the definition of an optional standby system? Oh boy, man, it's fired up. It's fired up. Get fired up. Woo! If the generator is connected to a private, I don't think I agree. Steve, consumer-owned or utility-owned is traditionally determinant of which rules apply. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Now, I'm going to bring up another issue. Hence the term service point. Oh, yes, exactly. There are now private companies offering backup power as a service, and this is service like your reliability, not the NEC service. So, here's the thing. That's right. So, if that private company, Alan, is not a utility, it's still not a service, because the definition of a service is it has to be from the utility. You agree with Steve's comment. Customer-owned or utility-owned isn't traditionally determined which rules apply. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. So, I mean, this was the discussion that we had, and I learned so much from that discussion. Because we had, in fact, the utility guy got involved. We had a great discussion around the table about why would that language be in there? I mean, in the best way to question it is to say, take it out. Take it out. Now you have to say, give me the arguments on why you're gonna reject me and leave it in. And I think they came up with a start. But I don't know that I would consider, to your point, Alan, you made the statement, I could accept a utility-owned standby generator near my property might be a service. And I agree with you. I think it probably would be a service. If it was near the property, I mean, even if, but would that be on-site generation? I don't know if that meets the definition. Where the generator is connected to the grid above the service disconnect, and it may be a service. But if below the service, and I think it's a customer-owned leased generator. Yeah. Yep. If the utility owns it now, if it's on your site and the utility, here was the other thing. I don't know if it was Al. I think it was Al Teresi. He said he's seen applications where you have a service point. You have a service point. This was a really, this was an interesting statement from Al. You have a service point, and you come on the secondary. Say it's medium voltage, Alan, and you come off the secondary. You come off of that's not secondary. You come off of the service point, and you land on a series of medium voltage transformers, and then you go to the distribution system. The service point is ahead of the medium voltage transformers, but the customer says, "Look, I don't know anything about medium voltage transformers. Mr. Utility, I want you to own those. And Mr. Utility, I want you to maintain those. And Mr. Utility, I want you to do everything that there needs to be done on those medium voltage transformers, and I'm going to pay you to do that. I'm washing my hands of it." But those transformers are downstream of the service point, but they're owned by the utility. I never even thought about that. What do you do? What are the requirements on the transformer? The utility owns them. And remember, we use this text in the code under the exclusive control. I mean, we talked about meter sockets today, or yesterday. We talked about meter sockets. And in the meter sockets, it says the meter socket has to be listed. And there's an exception, unless under the exclusive control of a utility. What does that mean? I agree, Alan. It's like, oh man, that is the value of sitting in these meetings. And Al wasn't on the code panel. Al was in the audience and listened. He was in the back of the room listening to the debate and the discussion. It was a good discussion. I thoroughly enjoyed the discussion. I learned a little, and I still question a little. Service point is the dividing line of responsibility. Yes, Steve, I agree with you. But I can, and what I told Al was, I said, look, in my opinion, if I have medium voltage transformers, just because I say, look, Mr. Such and such power company, you're going to own those for me and you're going to maintain them. That would be no different than going to a private company saying, hey, you buy those transformers, you put them in, and I'm going to pay you. I'm going to pay you some money to maintain those for me. You buy them, and you're going to recoup your money over the long haul. And so I wouldn't call those. I still say they fall under the rules of the NEC. In Iowa City, the service point is at medium voltage, but the utility provides, owns, and maintains the 1247 to 480 pad mount transformers. Yeah. So that's what he was talking about, that exact scenario. What codes do we follow for those transformers? Do we follow the NESC or the NEC? Are those services? Right? And it's no different than this generator. So Al, quite frankly, I was so frustrated because I'm like, oh my God, there's another scenario that muddies my waters. I'm gonna have to do a series. I'm gonna call it "Muddy My Water." So in Iowa City, there is one rate from 0 to 15 kV, and it includes the utility supplying unit sub transformers. Wow, Alan, that blows my mind. And then what code requirements do we follow? It's spooky. It really is. It really is. We follow NEC because it is allowed. It's right. It's below the service point. And that was my point to Al. Or I think that's the point that Al was trying to make. And I agree with him. So, and I think his point was, just because the utility owns it, or I don't know if that was his point. What I took from it, what it generated up here, was just because the utility owns it does not mean that those are now service conductors. So I go back to that generator. If the utility owns the on-site generator that's giving you your alternative energy, is it truly a service? As long as you have muddy waters on site, if off site, now it's a service of muddy waters. That's the truth. It is so true. But I'll tell you what, guys, I had a blast with that discussion. But yes, it's fuzzy when the building weatherheads are upstream of the meter sockets, so they are utility controlled downstream of the service point. It is. It's services are very complicated. They're very intriguing. But that was another big discussion that we had yesterday on 230.4. What's another one? What's the other word? Sufficient was removed. 230.31. Ampacity without. Oh, we rejected this one. We rejected this gentleman. I can't remember who made the public comment. But let's say 215. I'm going the wrong way. Let's say I go to 215 in the code, and where we say, it's in 230 as well, where we say you do for ampacity, feeders, overcurrent protection, minimum rating. If you say, okay, in item 1, and I made this statement, I told those guys, I said, look, I know this is going down, but this guy is 100% accurate. He was 100% accurate, and the poor guy got rejected. I fought for him a little bit. Wasn't going to die on the hill. But what he said was, in 215, say .4A1, where a feeder supplies continuous loads or any combination of continuous and non-continuous loads, the minimum feeder conductor size shall have an ampacity not less than the non-continuous load plus 125% of the continuous load. Now remember, this isn't in minimum ratings. In A1 is where we just do continuous and non-continuous, and we don't do the correction factors. In 2, we do the correction factors, but not the 1.25 for continuous. And then you see which one is larger. Okay? This poor guy had a very good public input, in my opinion. It was solid, it was accurate, it added clarity. What he wanted to do was say, his issue was, he says, the minimum feeder conductor size shall have an ampacity. What is the definition of ampacity? Ampacity includes temperature correction factors. So he says, hold on, you're saying it has to have an ampacity, not less than the non-continuous load plus the 125% of the continuous load. And all he wanted to do was he wanted to say the conductor size shall have an ampacity without application of any adjustment or correction factors, not less than the non-continuous load plus the 125% continuous load. And he's right. He's 100% right. He's 1,000% right. He is 10,000% right. I think it would have added a ton of clarity. And we rejected the poor sap. I was like, oh my God, guys. I said, look, the guy's right. He's 100% right. I know where the task group ended up on it. And what did we say? All we said in a panel statement was that the existing language is clear. And it requires that you just do the non-continuous plus 125% of continuous, and you don't do adjustment correction factors. And I just think that guy, I think he got railroaded. Oh my God, he was right. And I don't know, man. That's what sometimes it takes being there to explain it, present to the panel or the task group. It would have been great if you can't get to the meetings to get involved with the task group. So when you have a great idea like this and you are passionate about it, I mean, in my opinion, what I would have said was this is probably a no-brainer. But get it in there, try to do the first draft. I don't know if he did it in the first draft. I got to go back and look. I got to look and see who that was and send him a note. Oh my God. All right. What did he say? We just do the best we can, and I'll say that that's the same for the code panels. You know, we look at public inputs, we look at public comments, and we do the best we can in accepting or rejecting. And sometimes people are just afraid, Alan, to make a change in the code. At 6:55, how many projects mistakenly oversized gear with sloppy layers of yes? No, I don't disagree with you. When they add that 125% multiple times when they shouldn't, and you know why? Because when you look in the code, John McCamish made this statement years ago, and I don't think that task group is ever formulated, but it needs to. We need to look at the use of the terms continuous load and 1.25. Now here's another thing that John McCamish taught me. A motor, even if it runs for 4 hours, 8 hours, is not a continuous load. It's all about risk, Jim. You're absolutely right. It's all about risk. And you know what, Steve? I think you had a comment before we close. Jim did. You said, does this new language support what could be future of conductor and equipment protection? I'm thinking there can be layers of protection with specific listed equipment. I'm not sure if I understood that, and that's sort of another reason why I passed over it. I apologize. Jim, you don't get fired for, that's right, you don't get fired for over applying 1.25. Hey, 1 point, I'm going to get t-shirts made up that's called 1.25. That would be freaking funny. I literally had a young engineer reaching out to me last night. A machine manufacturer said machine full load amps is 25 amps, but machine main OCPD is 80 amps, standard MCCB. Yeah. Yep. Smarter power supplies. There we go. Alan, I missed yours. Question was on how to size feeder to a machine panel. Interesting. 25 amps, but the machine main overcurrent device is 80 amps. Now I wonder if that machine has motors that you needed inrush current issues. Jim Frey, class 4 fault managed power. That's a good question, Jim. That's a really good question. What about these outputs? Yeah. You know, Jim, that's a good question. That is a really good question because of overcurrent protection, right? Because the fault managed power talks about overcurrent protection. But you know what, Jim? Here's the thing. We do have smart breakers. We have we have the digital in there, so that's covered. We have like the digital, the solid state circuit breakers, but I think when you get to the class, I'm gonna have to look at that, Jim. That's a good question. I'm stumped. You stumped me. I have to really look at class 4 to understand. I gotta understand the. I know we have solid state circuit breakers in there, but that's listed to a certain standard. Fault managed power is listed to a different standard. I look forward to your public input, but I do have to think about that. I got to draw that out. You know what? I need to see it. I need to draw it out. I got to understand what are the feeders, what are branch circuits, and all that jazz. Fault managed class 4 has overcurrent protection in the equipment standard. That's true. It does. It provides overcurrent protection. It provides arcing fault protection, ground fault protection. There's a bunch of protections that it provides. But then the next question is that a feeder? Is it a branch circuit? What is it? Remember, it's a transmitter and receiver. What is that conductor called? What do we call that conductor? What is it? Is it a feeder? Is it a branch circuit? It's not service. It has to be a feeder. A mentor of mine, a longtime mentor of mine, one of my first mentors around the code. You know, he told me, Jim, he said, Thomas, there are opportunities all around us. That's what he would say. He would call me from his truck. And he'd say, Tom, I got another opportunity. Very good question, Jim. All right. Now I got to go downstairs with that in my head. Thank you, Mr. Frey. Gentlemen, ladies, I enjoyed the discussion this morning. That was a quick update on what I think those were the big areas from yesterday, and I still like the 125%. That gentleman, he got screwed, man. He got railroaded, I think. I just laugh because I know, when you're sitting at the table, you know what to fight hard for and what you think you can win, and I didn't think I was going to win that one at all. Thank you, Alan. Thanks for all you guys do, and thanks for tuning in it's really early morning for me, but Steve Froming in the house. Breakfast time. Yes, I still need a coffee. I got to go down, and I like to get the tall coffee from the little place down there. So, was that Brennan? Oh, you know what? It may have been. I'll tell you the public comment. It was in 2:30. It was in 2:30, and it was public comment number 150. I think that's the public comment. Yeah, public comment 150. You know what I got to do? I got to look at it. We're going to look at it real quick. 150. Public comment 150. I'm going to go to www.nfpa.org/70next. 150. Poor guy, man. Purchase first draft. View public comments online. 150. You know what? This is what I don't like about. I'm not liking the this software. 150 public reports. Report on this. I go down to public comments. I type in 150, and I hit switch. And no, it was. It was Wayne Whitney. View. Poor guy, Wayne. I think he put a few others in too. For 21019 and 21504. I gotta go see what we did on panel 2. I think we rejected him there too. Wayne Whitney, Whitney. That was it. But he was right. I think he was right. Poor guy. All right. I'm closing this. Moving that down. Leave page. And we're back. All right, everybody. Listen, I would love to stay and chit-chat, but I got to run downstairs, get my stuff in order, go get a coffee. Fountains of Wayne. Poor guy. He's crying a river. Cry me a river. Oh, man. All right, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, Alan, Jim Frey, and everybody else out there. Thanks for everything that you do. Thanks for tuning in. And I enjoyed the chat. I enjoy talking to you guys in the morning. I'm going to miss this when I go home. All right, everybody. Take care. Stay safe. And please stay healthy. I'll see you tomorrow. Saturday. Tomorrow's Saturday. We'll talk Saturday morning. Get your coffee. Don't cut grass until you talk to me. Jim Frey just became a member. You're the man. All right, guys. Uh-oh, what's this? I'm supposed to be going down. What's this one say? The 125 are complex but understandable. The public comment guide just needs to try again. That's exactly right. That is exactly right. And I'll tell you what, and if he gets it, Steve, he's probably, I'm going to put him in the $1.25 club. If you go out to thomasdimitrovich.com, I have a $1.25 club, and read what the penny means, the quarter, the nickel, and the dime, and the dollar. Read those descriptions, because one of them tells you persistence. That's the key. All right, Steve, thank you. Take care, everybody. Stay safe, and I got to run.